Welcome to the Assassin's Creed Timeline, Part 5, The Golden Age of Piracy. In Part 4, we experience the life of Italian assassin Ezio Auditore, as he avenged the death of his family and discovered an interactive message from the Isu Minerva, warning of another massive solar flare coming in humanity's near future, ending with an older Ezio accepting his role as a messenger for the future, and retiring from the Brotherhood, passing on his legacy to the Chinese assassin Xiao Yun, as she freed her land from the Templars and re-established the Chinese Brotherhood. Over the centuries, the conflict between the Assassins and the Templars became global, as the Assassins were now a more interconnected order, communicating with each other and working together across multiple regions. In the Far East land of Japan, throughout the late 1500s, warlords from different clans clashed for power as the Assassins operated within the shadows of conflict. One assassin, known as Hattori Hanzo, was crucial in shaping the history of the island nation, as he assisted in the powerful Oda Nobunaga's rise in an effort to unify Japan, and even obtained a Sword of Eden himself. Hanzo continued fighting the Templars in Japan until his death in the year 1596. But the Templars had also spread like cancer to the opposite side of the earth. The lands that Christopher Columbus helped discover eventually became colonized by the Spanish and British empires and infiltrated by the Templars at an early stage. In the late 1600s, one of the British colonies, Massachusetts, became enveloped in a hysteria over witchcraft, resulting in several innocent people losing their lives, with the Templars taking advantage of the chaos to destroy their enemies. Without a brotherhood established in the colonies yet to defend the people, a master assassin from London, Thomas Stoddard, was sent to retrieve a piece of Eden hidden in the city of Salem, and witness the horrific events happening in the colonies. But witch burnings weren't the only injustices happening in the New World. The English and the empires of Europe struggled for control of the islands of the Caribbean Sea, and profited heavily from the sale of cargo such as sugar, rum, and tobacco. The sailors, facing the harsh conditions of the Atlantic, such as hurricanes, powerful storms, and attacks from other ships, grew more and more unhappy with the low wages they earned, while the kings they worked for grew rich from their sweat and blood. Tired of the abuse, many of these sailors turned against their homelands, taking control of armed ships and raiding merchant vessels, in an effort to make a life and name for themselves. These criminals came to be known as pirates, men of fortune who lived by their own code and indulged themselves in the freedom of the seas. This was the Golden Age of Piracy, and the Caribbean had become a sea of outlaws. But not everybody in the Caribbean shared this freedom. One of the most inhumane practices in human history was one of the biggest businesses of the time: human slavery. Children were ripped from their mother's arms and taken, forced into hard physical labor in lands they did not know. One slave called Adewale dreamed of a better life, and one day in the year 1708, opportunity presented itself. Pirates raided the plantation where he worked, and he knew this was his chance to escape. Knocking his master on the ground and grabbing a nearby rock, he was forced to kill him and ran. Adewale joined the pirates in their raid, and he was welcomed as one of them, sailing with them for years, and learning the skills of a proper pirate and seafarer. In 1715, the ship they were on ran aground off the coast of Havana, and he was captured by Spanish authorities. Due to being fluent in multiple languages, the Spanish wanted to use him as an interpreter and chained him in a ship, getting ready to sail for Spain. A couple of years before, in 1712, a 19-year-old man named Edward Kenway married the love of his life, a young woman named Caroline Scott. Caroline came from a wealthy family, and her father disapproved of her marriage to Edward, who was raised as a farmer and did everything in his power to ruin their relationship. But the couple moved in together and struggled to live the life they wanted, Edward wanting to live a life of comfort and prosperity. Frustrated with his status, he would constantly go to the local taverns, becoming belligerently drunk, and eventually decided that he had had enough. He would find a way to make a fortune, and decided that he would become a privateer sailing for the king in the Caribbean.
I want a decent life.
How long would you be gone with these privateers?
A year, I reckon. 2 at the most.
All right. No more than 2. Promise me.
And Edward began his life as a privateer, not realizing that he had left behind a pregnant Caroline. During his travels, he sailed under multiple ships, learning how to wield swords and pistols, and meeting other privateers who would eventually become legendary pirates like Ed Thatch, the future Blackbeard, and his mentor, Benjamin Hornigold.
For we intend to take all that you own. Yet no harm shall befall any man so long as he remains at ease. Is that clear?
No me mate, señor. Tengo familia. Se lo suplico.
Anyone speak English? English?
Little bit.
Tell your friends we're stealing your goods, and we won't hurt nobody if everyone stays as still as a sandbar. You got that?
Please to repeat.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
The year 1713, a treaty was signed that ended all conflict between the major empires in the Caribbean, and British privateers were no longer needed, leaving Edward and his kind out of work. These men took to piracy, deciding to strike back at the empire that abandoned them, and Edward began working under a pirate captain on a ship named the Jacobite. This leads us to the year 1715 CE, and the events of Assassin's Creed IV Black Flag. The ship Edward was serving on attacked a passing vessel, but it proved too much for the pirates to handle, as an assassin jumped on board and killed the captain. At this time, Edward had no idea that assassins and Templars even existed, but he would soon find himself thrust into their conflict. While the pirates emerged victorious thanks to the raging storm, the ship caught fire and exploded, sending Edward plunging into the water. Washing up ashore, he discovered that he was the only survivor from his ship, along with the assassin he had seen before. The assassin was a man named Duncan Walpole that was secretly on his way to Havana to betray the Caribbean assassins and join the ranks of the Templar Order. Wounded by shrapnel from the explosion, Duncan offered to pay him for safe passage to Havana, and Edward requested payment immediately in return. Refusing, he shot at the pirate and ran, as Edward chased him, interested in the hidden blade he saw mounted on his wrist. Eventually, the two men came to blows. After killing the assassin, Edward found a letter he was carrying from Governor Laureano de Torres of Havana, secretly a Templar leader, detailing Duncan's defection to this mysterious order and speaking of a package he was supposed to deliver him. Seeing this as an opportunity to get rich quick, Edward took the assassin's clothes and adopted the identity of Duncan Walpole. A short time later, he encountered a group of English soldiers harassing a merchant named Stead Bonnet, believing him to be a pirate. Edward saved the man and discovered that he was also traveling to Havana, so the two of them decided to travel together, and his first stop in Havana was a local tavern, where several thugs recognized Edward. As a pirate that traveled throughout the Caribbean regularly, it was hard for him to keep such a low profile.
I've seen your face before! You's mates with them pirates down in Nassau!
Shut your fucking gob or I'll fill it with shot, you hear me?
Edward, is it?
Hey, I warned him. Come on!
The Spanish authorities nearby stopped the bar fight and chased Edward, and after escaping from them, Edward met up with Bonnet again, who'd been beaten up after he left him behind.
Oh, Jesus. I'm sorry, mate. This is my doing. I'm only trying to keep these Spanish eyes off me.
Oh, it's no bother.
But finally reaching his destination, Edward, still posing as Duncan Walpole, met up with the Templars excited for his possible prize. Since they had never met Duncan personally, Edward had slipped in easily, with the Templars recognizing assassin robes as he gave them the cube in Duncan's package, and they welcomed him into the Order, alongside Woodes Rogers, the first royal governor of the Bahamas, Julien Ducasse, a French arms dealer and mercenary, and the Grand Master of the West Indies Templars, Laureano Torres, the governor of Cuba. Not realizing that Edward was actually a pirate seeking glory and fortune, the Templars revealed their entire plans. They were searching for the Observatory, an ancient Isu site that would allow them to locate anybody on Earth at any time, an extremely dangerous tool in the wrong hands. The key to using the Observatory was the mysterious cube that Edward had given Torres, known as a blood vial. When a drop of someone's blood was dropped inside, and then placed inside a crystal skull, the Observatory would project an image of that person's location in real time. But the Templars had one problem. They had no solid idea where the observatory was located, and they needed Isu DNA to enter, which they could easily obtain by capturing a sage, and that's exactly what they had done. The pirate Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Black Bart. The sage was the product of the Isu Juno's experiments over 70,000 years before, whose consciousness was imprisoned inside the Grand Temple. But before being imprisoned, she was helping Minerva and Jupiter come up with new ideas to save their world from the solar flare. During one of these experiments, her husband Aita died, and she injected his genetic information inside humans, ensuring that her husband would be reborn time and time again, appearing throughout history in different forms, with 2 different colored eyes, and eventually developing Aita's memories, his personality, and a dislike of mankind. Due to being Aita reborn, Roberts had the blood of the first civilization inside of him, and he was the key to enter the observatory. After hearing the Templar plot, Edward saw this as nothing more than an opportunity to plunder a fortune, and plotted to talk to the sage himself, but not without having a few close calls.
Edward? Hello, Edward! I found a man to purchase my remaining sugar! Quite a coup, I must say.
He just called you Edward.
Oh, that's the merchant who sailed me here. Out of caution, I gave him a false name.
Ah, well done.
The assassins, also looking for the sage, attacked the Templars, and Edward was forced to defend himself and his Templar associates, having no idea of the war he had just inserted himself into. That evening, Edward snuck into where Roberts was being held, but found that he'd escaped and was discovered by the Templars, who had already become suspicious of him.
Basta ya! What is your true name, rogue?
It's, Captain Pissoff.
Take him to the ports. Send him to Sevilla with the treasure plate.
Oh, wait now! I delivered your treasures, didn't I?
You did, yes. But you robbed us of Duncanwald.
He was thrown into a Spanish ship and locked away, right next to Adewale, the slave turned pirate, and together the 2 men broke free. This moment marks the beginning of a close friendship bound in brotherhood and blood that would last for years to come. The 2 men freed the other prisoners on the ship, and Edward gained their loyalty. After escaping a massive fleet and sailing through a storm, Edward named himself captain and claimed his first prize.
By God, we pulled this one straight from the teeth of Neptune. I'm Edward. Much thanks for your aid back there.
Adewale.
Ever been to Nassau, Adewale?
Not yet.
By God, she took some knocks, didn't she? I think I'll keep her. All hands aft, lads! We're taking this one home!
He made Adewale his quartermaster and closest advisor, second in command of the ship that he named the Jackdaw, after his favorite childhood bird.
Jackdaw. You named your brig after a poxy bird.
His first task was to land on Nassau, in the Bahamas, and build his crew, finding poor sailors and like-minded men, being harassed by the local authorities. At the time, Nassau was considered a pirate safe haven, a lawless world where the outlaws congregated, attempting to turn the settlement into the seat of power for a pirate republic, a nation of free men visited regularly by legends such as Captain James Kidd, Charles Vane, and Calico Jack.
Oi, oi. Quite a long face. You've fallen in love? With your blouse.
And where Edward Kenway proudly displayed his status.
All it takes is a few drops of blood, sweat, and a swatch of cloth. We fly no colors out here, but praise the lack of them. So let the black flag signal nothing but your allegiance to man's natural freedoms. This one's yours. Fly proud.
I will.
Edward spent the next year sailing the seas, plundering ships and drinking with his pirate friends, while building his legend, and upgrading the Jackdaw's power and defenses, quickly becoming a legendary pirate and amassing a huge fleet of his own, handpicking some of his most loyal men to captain each of his ships, and even building his own mansion on the island of Great Inagua. Captain Edward Kenway became one of the greatest outlaws of the time, well known among his fellow pirates.
We do not plunge headlong into folly on the orders of a single madman, but act according to our own collective madness. So I'll put it to the vote. All those in favor of storming this cove and taking this ship, stomp and shout aye! Aye! Those who oppose, whimper nay.
The pretty one's mine!
Drag them to that!
Taylor was a brisk young sailor, full of heart and full of play, till he did his mind uncover to a youthful lady gay. 24 British sailors met him on the King's Highway, as he went for to be married, rest he was and sent away. Sailor's clothing she put on, went aboard a man of war. Her pretty little fingers, long and slender, they were smeared with pitch and tar. On that ship there was a battle, she amongst the rest did fight. The wind blew off her silver butt, her breasts were bare, all snowy white.
Piracy spread throughout the Caribbean, becoming a regular threat to merchant ships as they learned to fear the outlaws of the sea.
Give your quarry something to fear. Some hellish thing from a fevered dream. And men will drop to their knees, pleading for their lord before aught else.
Oh god. Even Stead Bonnet, the merchant that Edward rescued, was inspired to start his own pirate career.
Yes, Blackbeard cut me loose, sadly. Time to have a go at this myself.
Well, that's grand.
Yes, it's for the best, I think. I should have some wild stories when next we meet. Edward! Your constant friendship has been my most treasured find on these seas. Well above gold and silver and rum, I prize the courage you have inspired in me this year. Thank you, sir. A fair good morrow to you.
Edward became obsessed with the idea of finding the Observatory, but it was a lonely quest, as most of his pirate comrades thought it was simply a myth, except the young Captain James Kidd, who Edward felt knew more than he let on. Captain Kidd told Edward to meet him in Tulum, Mexico for more information, and he made his way over with the Jackdaw, becoming a solid enemy of the Templars as he ran into the Templar Julian Ducasse, killing him. After arriving in Tulum, he found an area swarming with people dressed just like Duncan Walpole, knocking them out as he looked for Kidd, thinking that they were monks protecting treasure. At that point, Adewale, mentor of the Caribbean assassins, appeared, furious that Edward had come, knowing that he was the man responsible for killing some assassins in Havana while defending the Templars. Kidd revealed that he was an assassin also, and told Adewale that Edward had what he called the sense, the eagle vision trait found in many assassins, and that he knew who the sage was, but the assassins had to be sure that Edward had the right man. Captain Kidd led Edward through a temple, where they found a sculpture of a sage, confirming that Bartholomew Roberts was the key to the observatory. But the Templars had followed Edward to Tullum, finding the location of the assassins. He did help them hold off the attack, but Adewale made it clear that one favor would not make Edward a friend, and told him to leave. By the year 1717, he tracked down Torres, forcing him to provide information on where the sage was hiding. While forcing Torres to help find Roberts, Adewale and Edward spotted Kidd there to kill him, and Edward rushed to stop him, interrupting his assassination mission, deciding to work together to find the sage. And during their conversation, Captain Kidd revealed an enormous secret.
Ready?
Your name's not James, is it? So, what's your real name, lass?
Mary Reed to my mum. But not a word of it to anyone. Or I'll unman you as well.
He had been posing as a man this entire time. In reality, Kidd was a woman named Mary Reed. The pair found the sage, but Roberts wouldn't make it easy and escaped again. By the year 1718, piracy in the Caribbean was thrown into chaos, as the King of England had issued a pardon to any pirate that turned himself in. With the pirate republic failing due to pirates spending all their earnings on drinking and leisure, versus building a stable government, the pardon was tearing them right down the middle, with some pirates jumping at the chance for a pardon, and others standing defiant, but all of them arguing amongst each other. Now was the time to lay low, as the British government was becoming less and less tolerant of piracy. But Nassau was in need of medicines, and Blackbeard, disgusted with pirates accepting the pardon, decided to get the medicines himself, attacking a British vessel, stealing their supplies, and then sacking the colony of Charleston, South Carolina, becoming one of England's most wanted men. Later that same year, Blackbeard decided that his time as a pirate had come to an end, and wished to live the rest of his days in a quiet, wealthy life. In October, he celebrated his retirement with a night of drinking, surrounded by friends.
Don't sit there like a barrel of wet fish. We're celebrating my retirement!
But tragedy was set to strike, as Blackbeard's crimes against the crown finally caught up to him.
What the devil?
The Royal Navy had followed Blackbeard and ambushed him with overwhelming force, as Edward rushed to his defense.
Not today, lads! Today we send the king's finest to their graves! Edward, my lad! I'll not fall here today, bastards! Come at me! In a world without gold, we might have been heroes!
The legendary Blackbeard had been struck down on his final night as a pirate. Legend says that he fought fiercely, being shot 5 times and stabbed 20 times before going down, as a shocked Edward that could barely speak made his escape on the Jackdaw.
What of that, sir? Did he fall? Captain?
He drinks damnation.
Visibly shaken by his failure to save Blackbeard, Edward and Charles Vane decided to search for the Observatory, but as some pirates do, Calico Jack turned against them and decided to steal the Jackdaw after losing his own ship, leaving Vane and Edward stranded to drive each other crazy after months of being marooned.
Keep still now. I'll take these oysters you've ordered.
You mad sap. This island's crawling with food if only you'd care to look for it.
Yeah, I am looking, Louts. Found some just here. Don't come following now. Do you hear me? Don't come looking for me.
After several attempts to kill Edward, it was clear that Charles Vane had lost his mind, and Edward single-handedly stole a passing ship, taking it back home and getting the Jackdaw back.
This Billy Huff didn't last 2 months with your ship before he came limping back to Nassau. Took the pardon straight away.
I had to, lads. That Rogers was onto me from the first. Hold your tongue, Rackham.
Benjamin Hornigold, the man who had mentored Blackbeard and believed so much in the idea of a pirate republic, took the pardon and was now working with the British and the Templars to capture other pirates. The very definition of a traitor. Hornigold escaped and Edward swore to get him one day, but left to go after the Sage, convincing him that the Templars were their mutual enemies, and finding the Observatory would benefit them both greatly. But the two pirates were tracked down by Hornigold, and Edward angrily rushed towards him, fueled by rage.
What have you done since Nassau fell, huh? Nothing but murder and mayhem.
You threw in with the very kind we once hated!
No! These Templars are different. I wish you could see that. But if you continue on your present course, you'll find you're the only one walking it. With the gallows at its end.
Together, Roberts and Edward found the Observatory, as the Sage began recovering his memories as the Isu Aita, remembering how the facility worked. Realizing the power to be had here, he attacked Edward, sending him plunging down below. Eventually making it out and suffering from his wounds later, Edward collapsed in front of Roberts as he decided to turn him in for a reward. It was now the year 1720, and Edward found himself on trial in Port Royal, Jamaica, where pirates were regularly sentenced to be hanged. Also on trial were Mary Reed and Anne Bonny, a barmaid that accompanied her on her travels with Calico Jack Rackham, and also sentenced to hang. But both women announced they were pregnant, since British law didn't allow hanging of pregnant women. Anne had become pregnant with Jack's baby, and Mary with the baby of a young sailor they'd met on their travels. 4 months later, Adewale and the assassins tracked down the captured pirates, saving Edward in order to get his assistance in saving Mary Reed, one of their own. And on the way to save her, Edward found the remains of Calico Jack, left on display to rot.
You weren't much of a friend, Jack Rackham, nor an able sailor neither. But you were strange and lively. You made me laugh more than once. And that's enough to make me sorry for seeing you like this. I hope you found a lasting peace, down there among the dead.
He also found Charles Vane, no longer stranded on the island, but still with his mind gone and sentenced to the gallows. Edward found Mary and rescued her. She had given birth already, but the baby was taken away from her. Although she was still alive, the terrible conditions in the prison were too much for the young mother to handle after giving birth.
Damn it. You should have been the one to outlast me.
I've done my part. Will you?
If you came with me, I could. Mary.
I'll be with you, Kenway. I will. What's happened to Mary? What's wrong?
Is she gone?
Oh no. Oh God!
What will you do now? Nothing sensible.
You haven't earned this, but they suit you. Good fortune to you, Edward Kenway.
After Mary's death, Edward and Anne traveled to the Assassins, where he met up with Adewale, now a changed man, forming a strong belief in the Assassin's Creed.
Jesus, Addy, what the hell happened here?
You happened here, Edward. The damage you caused 6 years ago has not been undone.
I'm not an easy man to call a friend, am I? Is that why you're here?
To fight beside a man so driven by personal gain and glory is a hard thing, Edward. And I have come to feel the Assassins and their creed a more honorable course. Have I been unfair?
No. For years I've been rushing around taking whatever I fancied, not giving a tinker's curse for those I hurt. And yet here I am, with riches and reputation, feeling no wiser than when I left home. Yet when I turn around, look at the course I've run. There's not a man or woman that I love left standing beside me.
There is time to make amends, Captain Kenway.
Mary. Before she died, she asked me to do good by her, to sort out the mess I made. Can you help me?
Inspired by Mary's final words to do right by her, Edward realized that he couldn't continue the path of piracy any longer. He was estranged from his wife, breaking the promise of being gone no longer than 2 years long ago. Most of his friends were at the bottom of the sea, hanged at the gallows or imprisoned, and the pirate republic he believed in had completely collapsed on itself. His only true friend left in the world was Adewale, now training as an assassin, and Anne, who had just lost her own child. Finding meaning with the teachings of the Assassins and a new path to follow, Edward decided to make amends for the damages he'd caused and trained with them. In the year 1721, he set out to find the Templars and end their search for the Observatory, making Anne Bonny his new quartermaster and flying a black flag identifying himself and his crew as Assassins. He tracked down Woodes Rogers, who had ruthlessly hunted down pirates, and engineered the local slave trade, wounding him and leaving him for dead. Although the Templar did ultimately survive his wounds, he was eventually forced out of the Templar Order, losing his illustrious status. But the sage was still out there, armed with the power of the Observatory in his hands. Edward tracked down Bartholomew Roberts and struck him down, in his final moments remembering Juno and his real identity.
But perhaps I was wrong about you. She might have had some use for you after all.
She? Of whom do you speak?
Oh, she who lies in wait, entombed. I had hoped to find her, to see her again, to open the door of the temple and hear her speak my name once more. Aye. Talk sense, man. Oh, I was born too soon. Like so many others before.
But Grandmaster Torres was still searching for the Isu site. With a renewed purpose in his life, Edward was determined to stop him from finding it. Returning to the observatory, he found Torres attempting to activate the device, prompting its security measures, not realizing that the assassin had him in his sights.
Captain Kenway, ever a splinter in my side. Does this murder fulfill you? You have no family anymore, no friends, no future. Your losses are far greater than ours.
That may be, but killing you rights a far greater wrong than ever I did.
You honestly believe that?
You would see all of mankind corralled into a neatly furnished prison, safe and sober, yet dulled beyond reason and sapped of all spirit. So with everything I've seen and learned in these last years, I do believe it.
You wear your convictions well. They suit you.
As Adewale arrived, he returned the crystal skull to its rightful place, and Edward informed him that several blood vials that were there before were missing, promising to return to search for them once he had returned home to England and fixed his marriage. But at that moment, Adewale gave him a letter that arrived the week before. While Edward was away, his wife Caroline had passed away, and he found out he had a daughter by her. By the year 1722, Edward donated his island getaway to the assassins as a hideout and arranged for his daughter to come to him by ship. As his daughter's ship arrived, he remembered his life as a pirate and the friends that he had lost.
You're a good man, Edward. And if you learn to keep settled in one place for more than a week, you'll make a fine father too. Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't. So felt parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all.
This ends the events of Assassin's Creed IV: Black Flag. Together with his daughter, Edward sailed back to England and joined the British Brotherhood of Assassins, quickly becoming one of its most influential leaders, and used the wealth he had gathered as a pirate to build a manor in London, where he kept his memories as a pirate hidden away in a secret room. In 1725, he married a woman named Tessa and had a son named Haytham Kenway. While raising his son as an assassin at a young age, Edward spent his time as an assassin searching the globe for Isu temples and sites like the Observatory, recording everything in his personal journal. On one of his travels, he discovered a Shroud of Eden and made sure to keep it hidden, locking it away in the Tower of London alongside the British crown jewels. Over the next 2 years, Edward raised his children in a wealthy life with regular visits by his friend and property manager Reginald Birch, who was secretly a Templar, determined to steal Edward's journal. On December 3rd, 1735, the Kenway home was infiltrated by masked men, sent by Birch to steal the journal, resulting in Edward's daughter Jennifer being kidnapped and taken away, and Edward ambushed and outnumbered. The legendary pirate and father of two was killed at the age of 42, having lived a short but turbulent life. Not knowing Birch had ordered the attack and unable to care for Haytham alone, his mother let Birch take the boy and raise him. As a final blow to Edward's legacy, Haytham was raised with Templar beliefs, coming to agree with their worldview. And after Edward's death, the Brotherhood in England began to decline rapidly, with Templars getting a stronghold in this country, a situation that wouldn't be reversed until the 1800s. That same year, back in the Caribbean, Adewale had become a full-blown assassin, finding himself in a battle with a Templar ship. This takes us to the year 1735 and the events of Assassin's Creed: Freedom Cry. After fighting off the Templars and ending up shipwrecked in Port-au-Prince, Adewale would be forced to come face-to-face with his past as a slave. He made his way to the local brothel run by Bastien Joseph, who recognized him as a stranded man and assassin, and she convinced him to help the growing Maroon Rebellion, a group of freed and escaped slaves fighting for freedom of all slaves.
A warrior like you would be a great asset to our cause.
With due respect, I serve a different brotherhood, and am honor-bound to return as soon as I find the means.
But only the Iwa know when that will be. Meantime, I have sanctuary and weapons to share.
Perhaps our needs may align for a time. What do you need?
Adewale explored the island, freeing slaves and helping the rebellion grow, temporarily returning to his pirate days to steal a ship. Using his newly captured ship, he used it to free slave ships, saving people from enduring the life that he was forced to live through in his early years.
May your suffering end here.
Over the next year, he reported back to Bastien, becoming closer to her. In his fight to bring freedom to the slaves, Adewale suffered many losses, including finding a sinking slave ship where many slaves lost their lives. Adewale had discovered that the local governor, Defayette, was behind the slave trade in the region, and he went after him, disrupting the inhumane business and making sure that this man would suffer before his end.
Who will come to your rescue? Your slaves? I've killed many men on principle, but never have I wanted one to suffer as much as you. To understand what it is to gasp and beg for your life, like the innocents you drowned.
You mean those slaves? But they're not even human.
After killing the governor, Adewale went to say goodbye to Bastien and returned to his assassin brothers. This ends the events of Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. Eventually, he did return in 1737, sharing a night of passion with Bastien, resulting in a son to carry on his name. Back in England, a young Edward Kenway officially became a Templar in the year 1744, and in the Caribbean during this time, Adewale was ending his final student's training, a young man named Achilles Davenport, who was sent to the colonies to establish the Brotherhood. And in the year 1746, Achilles founded the Colonial Brotherhood of Assassins to ensure freedom in this new growing land, and eventually formed a family of his own with his wife Abigail and his son Connor. One of Achilles' most skilled recruits was a man named Shay Cormac, who was brought into the Assassins alongside his childhood friend Liam O'Brien.
Admit it, I nearly had you.
Nearly counts for nothing, Shay. And besides, no. That was just luck.
I make my own luck, Liam.
You've been saying that for years, but you're precious little to show for it.
One day, while the Assassins were maintaining the grounds on Achilles' homestead, a now 60-year-old Adewale arrived with dire news. This leads us to the year 1752 and the events of Assassin's Creed Rogue. Adewale revealed that the Templars had stolen 2 pieces of Eden from the Assassins, a box and a manuscript that worked together to show the location of Isu temples. When activated with electricity, the box could translate the Isu language on the manuscript. He also mentioned an assassin search in Haiti for an Isu temple that ended in disaster. A massive earthquake occurred at the same time. After Shay overheard the conversation, he went back to his fellow assassins and continued training with Liam, a young woman called Hope, and a Native American called Kesigawasi. Knowing that the artifacts had to be recovered, Achilles sent Shay and Liam to go retake them from Templar hands. After hunting down the Templars, Shay retrieved the box and continued the search for the manuscript, finding it with another Templar named James Wardrop. With both artifacts in hand, Shay took them back to Hope in the town of Sleepy Hollow, where she was working with an inventor called Benjamin Franklin, who was performing experiments with electricity. Franklin knew nothing of the Assassins and Templars, but his scientific curiosity convinced him to help. After the device was activated, the map provided the location of a temple in Lisbon, Portugal.
It's a map! Where is that?
Portugal! Lisbon, I'd stake my life on it!
Make yourself scarce, Shay. The militia will be here any minute. I'm sure they will have questions.
And a mourning Achilles, who had just recently lost his family to fever, sent Shay to investigate the site and take whatever treasure was inside to keep it away from Templar hands. During this same period of time, Edward Kenway came across an artifact that led him to the New World, believing it was some sort of key to a site in the colonies, and he traveled there on ship. Kenway arrived in Boston and took up the position of Grand Master of the Colonial Templars, recruiting more to the order. During his search for the Grand Temple, he came across a woman from a Native American Mohawk tribe known as Zio, who wanted to fight the British, and convinced her to show him the entrance to the temple. Eventually finding the entrance, whatever artifact he held did nothing to open the doors to the Grand Temple. While he didn't find what he was looking for, he had become fascinated with Zio, and she became pregnant with his child.
You've shown me great kindness, dear. Thank you. I should go.
then left after receiving word that his sister, who had been kidnapped years ago as a child, had been found. After rescuing her, he discovered that his father's death was the fault of Reginald Birch, the Templar who had recruited him. Fueled by revenge, brother and sister found him, killing him, and avenging Edward Kenway. But over time, Haytham and his sister slowly lost contact with each other as he went back to his Templar goals. Although the Templars were the reason he had lost his father, Haytham had a strong belief in their ideas and remained dedicated to the order, returning to the colonies. In the year 1755, Shay finally reached Lisbon, Portugal, to find the Isu Temple, and after searching a local cathedral, he realized that the temple was hidden underground via a secret passageway. Shay discovered an ancient artifact hidden inside, and as he touched it, it disintegrated, and the situation he had heard about from Adewale and Haiti repeated itself.
God do this to them? God had nothing to do with this.
The Great Lisbon Earthquake, with an estimated death toll between 10,000 and 50,000 innocent people.
So what's the next city you want me to smite? What happened in Haiti happened in Portugal. A great earthquake? You made me slaughter innocents!
How dare you!
You defend him? Achilles sent me in there like Macandal sent his man in Haiti.
What the hell's going on? Stop this!
Unknown to Shay and the assassins, these Isu sites were seismic temples built by the precursor race to stabilize unstable sections of the Earth's crust. The assassins had just been responsible for the deaths of thousands of innocent people by disrupting these sites. Shay was so deeply affected by this tragedy that he stole the manuscript to keep the assassins from finding another site ever again.
We are responsible for killing innocents and destroying cities. This mad grab for power. It ends now.
I will not let you destroy everything we have built!
That's enough!
Give back the manuscript, Shay! I'm sure Achilles—
I cannot! I will not let this happen again! All those souls lost! One more hardly matters.
Shay!
Shay survived his fall but was heavily injured, being found by an old couple that nursed him back to health in New York, and they gave him a coat that used to belong to their late son. With his path as an assassin over and the manuscript at the bottom of the Atlantic, Shay became a vigilante in the city, hunting down the criminal gangs associated with the assassins, who were also terrorizing the local populace. His actions attracted the attention of Colonel George Monroe of the British Army, also a Templar. Reinforcing Shay's new beliefs that the assassins do more harm than good, Monroe sent him on multiple tasks to stop assassin activity from harming the citizens. Shay discovered that Hope had Benjamin Franklin working on new ways to spread poisons, and with a heavy heart, Shay realized his old friends were now the very same enemies he swore to destroy.
Hope, I pray it's not you.
By the year 1757, Shay had proven himself to be a loyal Templar, and discovered that they had found his manuscript. Shay dedicated his time to protecting his fellow Templars from assassination attempts, eventually confronting his old brothers directly. And learning that his childhood friend Liam had gone after Monroe, Shay went to save him, but he was too late.
Shay.
Monroe was mortally wounded, and he told Shay that an assassin had stolen the manuscript. The good, caring man that brought Shay into the Order was killed for simply being part of the Templar Order. After proving his loyalty time and time again, Shay met Grand Master Edward Kenway and was officially inducted as a Templar. Shay worked to wipe out assassin settlements all over North America while searching for the manuscript they had stolen, until the assassins became desperate as their numbers continued to decline. Eventually, Shay located one of the Brotherhood's most respected assassins, Adewale.
He's making a last stand. Let's not disappoint him.
He's in my sight! I'm line on him!
Forgive me, Adewale.
You dare beg forgiveness, child? Hell welcomes traitors like you.
Then I go there proudly, knowing I have done right.
You have become a monster, Shay.
Perhaps I have. Come.
The legendary assassin and best friend of Edward Kenway was struck down, truly bringing the Golden Age of Piracy to an end. By the year 1759, few assassins were left, with Hope and Liam on the lookout for Shay constantly and his Templar associates, but even they couldn't escape.
Hope. I didn't want to do this.
I trained you to do this. You had so much potential.
Filled with guilt, but understanding what he was doing was absolutely necessary, Shay went after Liam and Achilles before they could find another temple. But they had discovered another location and were on the way already. Shay tracked them there and found a temple with heavy defenses, similar to the one he had been in Portugal, and found the assassins about to grab another artifact.
Is this the apple? No, don't touch anything. Shay was right.
What would he know?
More than me, apparently.
Finally you understand. Achilles. This is a structure to hold the world together, not a weapon to control it. This whole calamity could have been avoided if you'd only listened to me.
You betrayed the Brotherhood?
Achilles and me, says the man who shot me in the back.
At the homestead? That was Chevalier. I don't miss! Him don't!
Accidentally tripping the mechanism, Shay went after his friend in a final confrontation.
You broke the assassins. Betrayed everyone you knew. You sided with our worst enemies. And for what?
To save the world.
I hope that world is a good one.
After Liam's death, Shay found Hatham about to kill Achilles and decided that enough blood had been spilled.
What kind of world are we making if we cannot show mercy? Besides, he understands what these precursor sites are now. Without him, the assassins may continue their search.
Never forget what has happened here.
I won't.
With barely any of the colonial assassins left, Hatham left Achilles a broken man, and the colonial brotherhood was disbanded, as the devastated mentor retreated back to his homestead alone. The assassin brotherhood still had the precursor box associated with the manuscript, and Hatham sent Shay to search for it, ending the events of Assassin's Creed Rogue. Join me next time for the Assassin's Creed Timeline Part 6, Revolution, where we'll see the child Edward Kenway unknowingly left behind grow into a fierce warrior and attempt to reignite the spark of the colonial brotherhood as the colonies fight a bloody war for independence, and another country tears itself apart from the inside as the Templars start a revolution of their own.